The Tonight Show set was full of laughter and energy when Mark Wahlberg stepped out to join Jimmy Fallon. The audience cheered loudly as the actor walked in, greeting fans and shaking Jimmy's hand with his usual charm. At first, everything seemed lighthearted, as Jimmy asked about Mark's latest movie and his fitness routine. Wahlberg answered with his signature mix of seriousness and humor, making the crowd laugh as he teased Fallon about not being able to keep up with his early morning workouts. The chemistry between the two was fun, but underneath, there was a tension waiting to break through. As the interview moved on, Jimmy began asking more playful questions, poking fun at Mark's intense schedule and his famously strict diet. The audience laughed, but Mark's smile began to fade as he leaned back in his chair. He responded sharply, saying discipline was no joke and that people often didn't understand the sacrifices he made to stay in shape and succeed. Jimmy tried to lighten the mood with another joke, but Mark's tone shifted, and the energy on stage became noticeably different. Jimmy, known for keeping things fun and relaxed, pushed forward with another playful jab about how Mark's daily routine sounded like military training. The crowd chuckled, but Mark's expression hardened. He reminded Jimmy that coming from where he did, with a tough childhood and a rocky start in life, discipline was the key that saved him. His voice grew firmer, and suddenly the audience sensed that the conversation had taken a serious turn. Fallon attempted to smooth it over, but Mark wasn't letting the subject go. The tension escalated when Jimmy asked if Mark ever thought about loosening up or breaking his routine, just to enjoy life a little more. Mark shot back with a pointed comment, saying not everyone had the luxury of taking things lightly, and that his discipline wasn't a joke, it was survival. His words hung heavy in the air. The crowd was unsure how to react, as laughter slowly turned into silence. Jimmy, still smiling nervously, tried to pivot back to a lighter topic, but the damage was done. At that point, Jimmy attempted one of his trademark comedy bits, suggesting they try a silly game to ease the mood. He pulled out props and invited Mark to join, but Wahlberg refused with a cold stare. He told Fallon that not everything in life was a game, and that sometimes people needed to respect boundaries. The audience gasped at his bluntness, and Jimmy, caught off guard, stumbled over his words. The playful energy that usually defined the show had completely evaporated. The heated exchange reached its peak when Fallon tried one more time to crack a joke, asking if Mark would let him join one of his 4 a.m. workouts. Instead of laughing, Mark leaned forward and told Jimmy he wouldn't last 5 minutes in his shoes. The crowd reacted with nervous laughter, but Mark wasn't joking. His frustration had boiled over, and he clearly felt disrespected by the way the interview was going. Jimmy, visibly uncomfortable, kept smiling, but his eyes betrayed his unease. Finally, Mark removed his microphone, stood up, and told Jimmy that if he couldn't respect the seriousness of his journey, there was no point in continuing. The audience gasped in shock as Wahlberg walked off the stage, leaving Jimmy sitting alone at his desk. Fallon tried to play it off with a nervous laugh, joking that maybe Mark had just gone to squeeze in another workout, but the tension was impossible to ignore. The cameras quickly cut to commercial, but by then, social media had already exploded. Clips of the dramatic walk-off spread like wildfire, with fans and critics debating what had just happened. Some defended Mark, saying he was tired of being mocked for his lifestyle and discipline. Others criticized him, arguing that he had overreacted to Fallon's harmless jokes. Either way, the incident had instantly become one of the most talked about moments in late-night television. By the next morning, headlines everywhere highlighted Mark's dramatic exit. Talk shows, radio stations, and online platforms dissected every second of the interview, debating who was at fault. Some pointed out that Fallon often pushed guests into silly games, and that Mark simply wasn't in the mood to play along. Others argued that Mark's reaction revealed a deeper frustration with how people perceived him and his work ethic. Regardless of perspective, the confrontation left a mark on both their reputations. For Jimmy Fallon, the incident was a rare moment of losing control over his usually upbeat set. For Mark Wahlberg, it became another chapter in his public image as someone who doesn't tolerate disrespect. The clash proved that even in the world of comedy and entertainment, boundaries matter, and when those boundaries are crossed, even the most polished interviews can unravel in front of millions. It was a fiery, unforgettable night that showed just how quickly laughter can turn into confrontation.